Agenda item 3, presentation and discussion with the Open Land Institute ULI staff regarding an overview of the ULI panel's January 16th discussions in Carefree. We had 2 weeks ago an all-day session involving the town council, business leaders, and experts from the ULI. Dave Roderick, Amy Mallory, and Stacy Hagerson are with us tonight to give us a synopsis of what they think happened on that all-day event.
That fateful day, yes. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for having us here. Again, my name is Dave Roderick. I'm with the Downtown Phoenix Partnership. With me is Amy Malloy, who is with Mace Ridge West Corps and has served kind of doing all the behind-the-scenes work. And obviously, you mentioned Stacy is in the back with ULI. ULI, which we are our members, is a professional organization for real estate development folks internationally, really. And its mission is to focus on the leadership and responsible land use and in creating sustainable communities. The way we do that through the Arizona District Council, which has almost 1,000 members, is a program called the Arizona Technical Assistance Panels. And that is really where we bring in outside independent professionals in the field to help provide guidance and advice to communities, nonprofits, and so on critical land use issues that are happening. We were approached by the town last year and were asked to take a look at your town center here where we are today. Obviously, there have been a number of issues over the years, and it has gone through some ups and downs, and the town really is very focused on what it can do to help rehabilitate that and make it a very desirable community asset. The goal of the ASTAP program is not to give you detailed answers. It's really to focus on big picture issues to make sure that major ideas are all brought forth for your consideration. We're not the ones obviously making the final determination. You and the staff will be doing that, but we want to make sure that you're aware of key concepts, trends in the industry, things like that, to help you make a more informed decision. So to do that, we put together a panel with a number of panelists from different perspectives. We had Dave Scholl, who was formerly with Westcor, was very involved in a lot of the big malls as a developer, such as Fashion Square. Lorenzo Perez, a small-scale retail and mixed-use developer. He's done a number of infill-type projects. He's working on the old Beef Eater near Central and Camelback right now. Danny Little is a retail leasing expert. He was very involved in the Scottsdale Waterfront project. Frank McGuire, who does events and programming of retail facilities, has done a lot in Tempe. J.T. Elbrecht, who is architecture and design and has worked extensively in Desert Mountain and DC Ranch, so is very familiar with this area. And then Nick Dodd, who focuses on public sector financing. So we had, I think, a very good panel. The town staff provided great detailed information beforehand. Applaud Gary and especially DJ for the work they did to put together the briefing book. They took us on a tour before the panel, and then compiled a list of key questions they wanted us to answer. So with that, Amy and I are going to kind of tag team. We're going to run through the major questions and some of the key responses that we felt. There will be a final report presented to you probably in the next 2 to 4 weeks. And we're in the process of putting that together right now, but hopefully, again, this is going to help you make a more informed decision on what to do here in the town center. So Amy, question number 1.
Sorry, I'll have to lower the mic. So again, just thank you again for your time. It's been wonderful working with the town. We were able to, my name's Amy Malloy and I'm with Mace Ridge, formerly Westcor, so we have lots of experience in retail, larger retail, so it was really nice to come in and be a part of this intimacy that you guys have here in the town of Carefree. So the first question that we really talked about at the panel, and most of you were there and remember, was visibility, attraction, and vision. And it was an interesting discussion, and we think the heart of it really became the task to the town of how do you create a village, because the town wants to be a village, but has turned its back on this village concept to some respect. So a lot of the discussion really centered around how do we work together to create this village, and some interesting questions that sprang from this question. One of them was, how do we transfer from this hobbyist retailer climate to more nationally recognized tenants? How do we focus those nationally recognized tenants with hobbyist retail? How do we coexist together as a village would coexist together and not feel that one is fighting against the other? I think some interesting discussion took place on the type of retail, and there's really the convenience retail, and then there's the kind of free time experiential retail. And how do you locate your, convenience retail in areas that have good parking amenities and good access in and out, and how do you locate your experience, leisure, pedestrian-oriented leisure in areas where you want to create the best possible environment for that. We need destinational tenants. There was some discussion, which we thought was a good discussion, on this idea of having some entertainment components brought into it, having some maybe non-retail, other than just neighborhood serving uses, which you do have as far as office and dry cleaners, but the idea of just incorporating some different types of uses, whether it be university related, whether it be housing related, specifically on some of your open parcels, or as you guys are just doing a rezoning to allow for it above existing retail spaces, so which I think the panel was very favorable of, those kind of components. Another thing to creating this village concept was this idea of you have a strong anchor, and that's the people in your community. And I think the one thing, and we'll keep coming back to this, is this idea of working collectively and creating, we're listening to the previous conversations, whenever you have a bunch of different organizations all doing the same sort of thing separately, nothing can get accomplished. But this constant theme that was brought back in the day, and which really this vision question centered around, was organizing your small business community to create like a CBA, a business authority, some sort of merchants association where everyone's working as collaboratively as possible towards a shared plan and vision, which you, the council, and the town would kind of lay out. So those were the high points. There's specific examples they gave. The Queen Creek Olive Mill was kind of a really good example of a local gem that has created a real buzz for the town of Queen Creek. And this idea of you have so many incredible components working for you here that you just almost need to leverage off of what your successes are currently in your town center. So, Dave for 2.
The second question was one dealing specifically with town investment. Obviously, you have limited resources. You want to make sure that you are going to invest those resources most appropriately in order to get the desired outcome. I think the biggest takeaway on this question was the whole concept that the group felt very strongly about, that you need to try to leverage your resources and really try to create public-private partnerships. There was a phrase that was used very frequently about everyone needs to have some skin in the game. And what you'll find is if the town comes forward and says, okay, we're going to pay for X within the town center, be it more parking or a splash pad or whatever, I think you're going to get the merchants and the property owners saying, great, go ahead and do it. Now, if you come forward and say, we want to leverage our funds, but we want you to participate because it's to your ultimate benefit, you're going to get a lot different responses, and they're going to really want to think through what is most appropriate to do. So that whole idea of creating these public-private partnerships, I think, is very critical. We did talk about the potential of creating different mechanisms. There are improvement districts or business improvement districts to pay for infrastructure, pay for services, and so on. So there are a lot of different ways out there, but again, the key is really that ability to try to generate some cash up front to be able to do the desired projects and have all people, including the town and the stakeholders, participate in those. So again, kind of bottom line, get your stakeholders actively involved and participating with the town jointly to decide on what you want to do.
And that's a great transition, kind of the third piece of the panel discussion, which talked about land ownership. And in addition to grabbing your stakeholders and motivating them, there was a really interesting discussion on the day of the panel, which I'm sure many of you remember. I think it was Danny Little that brought it up. It's almost one of the first things you want to do when you're looking at who owns these properties and who's operating these businesses is you separate them into the green, yellow, and red groups. And so you take all of your stakeholders and you find who are my green group, who are the ones that are on board with me, that we're going to be arm in arm, the coalition of the willing, to go out and kind of proselytize what the town's goals and missions and plan is and help execute it. Who's in the yellow group? Who, I think Danny said it, who do we need to take to dinner? Which was a cute way of saying, who needs to be wooed a little bit, but there's capacity to woo them. And then who are the reds that we're not going to change their minds? And the goal has to be to keep them from becoming obstructionists to what the majority wants to accomplish. So I think that was a really interesting kind of delineation of creating ownership from these separate owners and investors and business owners. The idea too is once you kind of delineate that group, then you can kind of organize a little bit, create these facade improvement programs. A great idea that I think it was J.J. Albert had was this idea of having a consulting firm provide volunteer services, architecture engineering, where you have a forum where people who have the will to want to do something but don't necessarily have the experience or the knowledge base, so you can meet with professionals and offer some consulting services for that, or the town would even pay for a day consulting, and they'll be at Cafe on Easy Street, come and visit. So the idea of working, creating some expertise with your coalition of the willing, and then putting together some real programs like zoning incentives or the dreaded property tax discussion, start exploring some of these other financial opportunities, SBA loans that the city would have some participation in. And there's forums and advice that the town can also get to get some expertise on how to best utilize the resources that you do have in order to create programs that are going to be the biggest bang for the buck, especially for some of these absentee owners where you have the largest problems, in the town center. So the other big focus was those two main developable parcels that are not yet developed. That, I think, the takeaway was that is one of the greatest assets that you have, to have that available land space, and putting together a collective plan to develop that and to get everyone on board with that is going to be really positively impactful for the town.
The fourth major question was dealing with parking strategies. Specifically, is there enough parking in the town center? What about how do you handle major events? There's, I know, discussion about doing a parking structure at some point in time. How would you pay for that? Things like that. So parking is a very difficult question. It tends to be a two-edged sword. If you have too much parking, it looks really dead, and you don't want to do that. If you have obviously not enough parking, then people circle around and drive away frustrated. So it's a real balancing act there. Users, especially retailers, are often going to be the ones to drive the parking numbers themselves. And different users have very different demands. So you can't just go out and say, okay, we're going to build 5 per thousand. I mean, if you have users that have peak times every single day versus spread out over the course of the day, obviously that's going to change the parking calculations. For major events, I think the concept is you never park to the peak, and obviously there are going to be a few times a year when you have situations that are very difficult, but most people going to major events do not mind. They expect to have to walk a ways from parking, so don't try to ever accommodate 100% of that. There was a lot of discussion. You could build a parking structure, but I don't believe the panel felt very strongly that that was a solution. There are much more viable opportunities out there. You can look at shared parking. You know, if you again do with some of the vacant parcels, development that has different parking needs, different hours of the day. You know, residential works real well with office and so on. You could also look at a parking management program where you try to more effectively manage the parking that you have in place. One of the things, whenever you have free parking in a retail area like this, we've seen it time and time again, is the employees tend to take all the choice spaces right out front. And so, you know, are there ways you can put, you know, time restrictions on parking spaces to force the long-term parkers out to the more remote areas and leave the closer in spaces available. So there are a lot of different strategies out there to deal with the parking. I think the group felt that those types of things ought to be explored first and foremost before you even get into any kind of discussion about paying for a parking structure. That's going to be very expensive. Typically, depending upon the type, you're going to look at 10, 15, even 20,000 a space. And then you have ongoing maintenance cost as well, and so it gets very, very expensive for a community to look at that.
And I'm sorry, the one thing too, like your parking problems are event driven too. You know, you have so many events happening where so I know Dave will probably talk about this, but the idea of shuttling to parking off site is an opportunity as well. The fifth question talked about incentive strategies, and a large part of the first couple questions I think were also geared towards that, with the overall kind of theme of the day being there's a lot of opportunities that you guys have already in place that currently exist in the town. And so this idea of layering on incentive programs for businesses, getting the town some financial expertise on how to best leverage resources to provide the biggest bang for the buck for the businesses would probably have been the biggest takeaway that the panel provided that day. I mean, you're gonna maybe want to set up a business improvement district, or maybe look to what's been successful out there in the market and see how small communities are leveraging their own resources to do that. But the idea of the town getting some financial expertise, and I think that would be a major recommendation from the panel, that you have so many benefits here that other communities cannot manufacture. So if you can provide kind of critical incentives for businesses, whether it be an incubator program for businesses that you want to attract and or kind of burgeoning new businesses that you want to bolster up, there's where the town could provide some funds, or the business improvement district can provide some funds for a period of years, reduce rent or whatever it is. We do that all the time, even at the Macerich West Core level. When we have a tenant that's highly desirable that we know will be a draw for a center, we look at ways to kind of incentivize or ease the burden off of that tenant or a group of tenants to create that draw. And that's, I think, probably one of the things we would say from a retail perspective would be really effective for the town to look into.
Question number 6 dealt with tenant strategies. What are some of the best practices for the private sector, the commercial property owners, to help fill the vacancies that we see now? A lot of discussion about what Carefree brings to the table, what the town center has today. A very strong feeling that obviously a very unique character. You've got some cool architecture and so on, and so it's probably going to be more attractive to go after the locals versus the big national chain tenants. More unique retailers, restaurateurs. They don't have to be big; they can be smaller. But really, that probably needs to be where the focus is going to lie. As Amy mentioned, there was a lot of discussion about trying to create some kind of a retail or town center association. Get all of the key stakeholders in the town center sitting down together, coming up with an overall plan on what they could do. And I think that's one of the best things you could do, is if you could convene or find a way to get all these people together to be talking together. There was even suggestions about trying to hire a master developer or leasing agent or something to look at the entire town center holistically rather than the piecemeal way it's been done. A lot of discussion about, again, kind of that pop-up retail or incubator space. You know, can we use some of those vacant properties? A lot of, you know, courtyard type of properties that are buried that, you know, could you offer those to, you know, some small startup businesses, get the property owners to agree, you know, we'll waive any leasing costs for the first 6 months or something, to try to get them in there and see if you could create some new businesses. Use the existing successful merchants to help you sell this. I talked to the woman who runs the tea room, and she was saying, yeah, I'm happy to, you know, talk to prospects that are here and tell them, you know, you can be successful here. Now, she does a great job in terms of marketing and the product and so on, but use the success that you have here to help sell. And again, go in together as the town and the association or the town center stakeholders to try to sell, because again, it's very powerful when you come in on a combined basis and not just them or the town coming in solely trying to attract. Again, use that ability to work together and really convey your vision for the town center and the passion that you see for it.
And the seventh question talked about taking that passion, taking that vision, and how to reach your target market with that. You know, the very first thing I think that the panel would suggest to the town is to evaluate your target market, to do a survey of the target market as a baseline to start from. And what is it that this area wants to see in a town center? Why are they not shopping Carefree and going someplace else? Why are they not eating Carefree? You know, is it a inconvenience of access? Is it there's not the sort of choices that they want to get when they cruise down Scottsdale Road? And unfortunately probably hit one of our centers. I apologize for that, Carolyn's. But, you know, what is it? Is it an environment? What kind of environment is your target market looking for? And then the other kind of interesting piece of this is in this idea of staying with the village theme. The target market is your neighbor. And it's not, and I think we have a tendency, and Dave and I we both came from a city background where we worked in the public sector. So there's a tendency in small communities in Arizona to put your fortress up and isolate a little bit from your neighboring town or city. And there's an idea of, you have a really interesting asset and neighbor that's different from you guys in the town of Cave Creek. So what is things that they're doing successfully, such as creating some interesting iconoclastic branding? There's definitely a vision and a plan that wouldn't work for this community, but they've gathered together on that plan and they're executing on that plan and kind of moving forward together. So the idea of looking and working with them to collaborate on what you guys have as your own unique kind of resort, desert, community opportunities, and working collaboratively with your nearest neighbor to kind of send out maps, the walking maps that Phoenix has, where you check off going to all the restaurants and you go to all the boutiques, creating this real interesting kind of market, joint market with them, which we thought was a really interesting opportunity for collaboration and probably something that would help branch this area and this region as a go-to destination for your target market and beyond.
The final question, actually two questions, but I'm going to combine them, is really focused on future opportunities and priorities as far as the panel looked at this. I think the bottom line in terms of the future is all the panelists felt very positive and really see a lot of incredible potential here. You've got great demographics, you've got growth, you've got affluence, you've got access to a very significant tourism market that is very powerful. You've got a good reputation and growing events here in the town center. You've got a lot of unique character and existing amenities within the area. everyone loved the Desert Garden and the amphitheater. That's beautiful. I personally, I had no idea. I hadn't been up here in a while. I had no idea it was there, and I'm just blown away at how wonderful that is. And finally, just the fact that the town is focused on this, I mean, is very important. Just knowing that the dedication is there and you want to see something happen is really important. So I've come up and listed, I've got kind of 10 key priorities here, or takeaways that I see as a result of the day we spent together. Number one, and the one that I think was highest on every panelist list, was this whole concept of creating a shared community vision. If you don't get the entire community buying off on this concept, that this is where we want to make investments, this is a priority for us, it's going to be really difficult to do anything. Now, you may get out there and find the community, is more interested in enhancing garbage pickup service or something else, but I have a feeling they're going to say, yeah, we want a point of pride, we want something that we're going to look at as uniquely Carefree and something that we're really going to focus on. And so that whole idea of creating that shared vision is, I think, very important. Secondly, and very related to that, is on a smaller scale, the whole idea of getting all of the key stakeholders here in the town center together and working and focus on creating their own vision for the town center. Obviously, the town needs to be part of that process, but you need them to be directly involved, to be communicating with you, with each other, coordinating, coming up with ideas and strategies. That's going to be critical. And again, if you can do something to convene, to get all those people together, it's a great first step. The third thing, for any of the city investments or incentives that you're going to provide, the whole idea of public-private partnerships, I think, is very critical. You want to have everyone have some of the skin in the game. You don't want to just go out and start doing things. You want to involve them, but also get them to help pay for, the improvements. It's ultimately going to benefit them. The town shouldn't have to be the one to bear the whole cost of this. And again, by getting them involved in the process and paying for it, you're going to get a lot more buy-in and a lot more focus on what's going to be critical. The fourth thing, there are a number of ways you can do this. We talked about improvement districts, tax rebates, and so on. But again, make sure everyone is involved in that discussion. The fifth thing, the whole concept of mixed use is a very important driver. You should not try to focus 100% of the town center on retail. Now I know that's the desire, but it would be far better to have 50% of the square footage devoted to retail and have that do really well, because you're supported by hotels and residential and office and services and everything else, rather than have 100% retail but have it not be successful. You really got to think mixed use in this day and age. It's a lot of integration, vertical mixed use as well as horizontal mixed use is going to help you. You want to focus on your local and unique retailers and restaurateurs, as opposed to really trying to go out and get big national tenants. I mean, what's not going to do well is to try to put Chili's or TGI Fridays, in the town center. You want the unique retailers and restaurateurs that are going to really help support the character that you have here today. Seventh, we talked about placemaking. That is very important. It involves many different aspects. Architecture, connectivity, things like that. But I think the one piece we all felt was really important to really try to focus on is the whole idea of wayfinding. It is difficult to know what is here. You're coming up Scottsdale Road. It's very easy to just kind of drive past. You see a couple small signs that say, Sundial and Shops, but on the outskirts you see banks and services and real estate companies. You don't really know what's in here. You've got to make it obvious. The eighth, the town is probably going to need to, make some investments, especially up front, take some risk, but oftentimes that's what it's going to take to kickstart a project. So, You know, you've really got to think strategically. If this is where the town is focused and this is where the shared vision is for the community, you're going to probably need to step up and really try to do something to facilitate, to get it rolling in the first place. Ninth, keep at it. This is not a short-term process. It's going to take a long time. It's going to be difficult. One of my favorite quotes is Winston Churchill says, you know, if you're going through hell, you better keep going because you don't want to stay there. You know, you got to keep pushing forward. And again, there are going to be setbacks all the time, but you do need to keep moving forward. And then finally, the whole concept of passion. And you know, you heard it from Danny Little all day long, but the whole idea of passion is really what drives activity. You got to get out there, you've got to sell this, you've got to express your great passion for what this community is and what the town center can be for you. So again, with that, we'll get a final report, all the notes to you, to staff here very shortly. But in the meantime, we'd be glad to answer any questions.
Well, number one, I'd like to thank you and everyone who participated in that Arizona Technical Assistance Panel. That was one of the most interesting days that I've spent in this town. I think I have heard the same comment from this council and the citizens who participated. Well done.
Thank you.
Very well done.
It was not boring. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't looking forward to that all day sitting still and not being able to talk. The day really went
Not a
by,
politician.
the day really went by fast. I enjoyed it, and it was very educational. Plus, I think we could all say that it kind of reinforced us a lot of the things that we've been talking about. Now we need to move forward.
One of the things I think it did, we have been talking about a lot of those things, but you brought focus and an order to them. And I found it to be extremely helpful. Thank you to all of you.
Other questions, comments? I assume that you mentioned there will be another presentation coming up in several weeks where we get the final report. Is that a presentation? Or report?
No, that's the written report. It'll have all the detailed notes and so on. I saw a draft of that. All the panelists reviewed it, and then we'll get it to Gary and he can distribute it.
And we'll see how to proceed at that point. Thank you very much for your good work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck. Fun.
We've got the passion, we just need the other 9 steps.
We might be following
So,
it.
and what did Danny say at the end? Love what you do, make money, and 1 out of 2 won't work. So, both of us.